It's race one of F1 Academy and Qatar, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. The title fight was on between Alpine driver Pulling and her protagonist, Mercedes driver Dorian Pain. Pin managed to maintain the start of the race at the lead, but Pulling moved forward into P2. Further down the grid, they traded places, and there was a big moment for Bianca Bustamante, which sent her to the back. It was Pocket Rocket Pat who took the win, but with 263 points to her name, Pulling made history and was crowned the 2024 F1 Academy champion. It was a moment that no one will forget. After 11 hard-fought races, 7 poles and 11 podiums, a jubilant Alpine driver, Abby Pulling, took the title. But there is still plenty to play for. Welcome back to round 6, race 2 in Qatar. Now let's take a look at this track here. At 5.4 kilometers in length, it is known for its smooth, flowing layout. A combination of technical corners and full throttle sections. This is very much a circuit that will require high commitment lap after lap. You can see the view there. All the drivers are getting ready for this second race of the weekend after what was such a fantastic race here in Qatar. My name is Dickie Shields. Alongside me is former McLaren factory driver Joe Osborne. Joe, do you think it sunk in as Abby Pulling coming to the track today as a champion? How is she going to be feeling? We can see there Susie Wolf, Managing Director of F1 Academy, talking to Zach Brown, McLaren CEO.
Yeah, Warren Hughes, one of the trios there, Bianca Bustamante's driver coach, Dorian Pain there. Yeah, going back to your point on Abby Pulling, what a great way to celebrate a championship, to get out there the next day and go and drive around with zero pressure. We go on board with Pulling here, Alice Powell, her driver coach, mentor, friend, all of those rolled into one. Final prep, she had a great start yesterday, didn't she? She got past Maya Vug, who's to our right. So same again, hopefully, for Abby Pulling.
So let's take a look at how the drivers are going to line up on the starting grid today. So Chloe Chambers at the back there with a P16. Lola Lovenfoss alongside her in 15th. Emily De Hausch in 14th, with British racing driver Jess Edgar will be starting from 13th. Tina Hausman in the Aston Martin 12th, and Amna Alcobazi, who's looking for some more points this season, in 11th. Aurelia Nobles will be starting in 10th, and Carrie Schreiner, who dropped out of the points yesterday, will be starting from 9th. Then we have Leah Block after a formidable qualifying, will be starting in 8th, and Bianca Bustamante in 7th. Nerea Marti will be in 6th, and alongside her, Amna Alcobazi in 5th, as she was yesterday. Our wildcard driver, Alicia Parmovsky, will be in 4th, and Abby Pulling, our Formula One Academy champion, in 3rd. Maya Vug for Ferrari will be on the front row of the grid again, her 3rd front row start. And alongside her, we have Dorian Pain, who won yesterday. She had a light to flag victory, and no doubt the goal is very much the same again here today. Dorian Pain, of course, is 2nd in the standings at the moment, sitting on 178 points. Her nearest competitor is going to be Maya Vug. But let's talk about this driver, the driver of the moment, the driver of the season. It is, of course, Alpine driver Abby Pulling. She said, I don't think she could quite believe it had finally happened. She had a huge grin on her face, and understandably so, and just said thank you so much to all the support. And just a reminder that obviously there are so many people that are involved in getting her into this position, including the person you can see just here, Alice Powell, her driver coach. Huge support, huge mentor, always by her side. They had a huge emotional hug when Abby got out of the car. It was quite interesting to hear, though. Abby did say, "Where's my dad?" Her dad, Andy, has also been a huge support, but he was watching down at turn 1, so wasn't actually there when she jumped out of the car. But what a lovely way to come into a race knowing that you are champion.
Yeah, Alice Powell and her other biggest fan there on the front of the car. And yeah, like I said, she'll be able to relax today now the championship is done. It's quite a strange feeling. I've had it myself before, where you're out there, you've already won the championship, you're just kind of floating around, and sometimes you actually pick up a bit of speed because there's such less pressure upon you. Seeing some of the barrier damage that we may be having a slight delay on. You can see there's an update in 5 minutes we're going to get. That was from the previous Porsche Super Cup race, and it was just damage, and they look like they're happier with it. Some of the trucks have moved away from it, but you can see how extensive that damage is. Just going back on Pulling, she's got an 11 race streak going, always on the podium. She might be able to continue that and finish the championship with 3 more rounds to go, which is something Michael Schumacher famously did in 2002 to win the F1 World Championship. So hopefully we don't have too much delay from that crash we were talking earlier in the Porsche Middle East race.
So we're now looking at the helmet and now the eyes of Alicia Parmovsky. She is our wild card driver of the weekend. She is starting from 4th, which is a fantastic position for one of our wild card drivers. Obviously, having had very limited experience during the F1 Academy season, unlike the rest of the drivers. But she was a recent runner-up in the GB4 Championship, a brilliant pedigree of a driver. And actually, she did have testing here. Well, all the drivers had testing here earlier in the month. 3 days of testing at this track. She topped one of the sessions. P6 was actually her lowest. So she's quick. She's bringing performance, and we saw yesterday she managed to finish in P5 and take 10 points home. So it's going to be fascinating to see what she can do here today, to see if she can carry that momentum and if we get a repeat performance of that.
Yeah, mega pace from Alicia there, and if she can finish inside the top 8, she would actually score the most points any wildcard entry had scored. If she can finish 4th, she would actually go up to 12th in the championship, so that would be a great job. Looking at Hamda El Khabaisi here, she's on a 100% point scoring record at the moment in 2024. So she's been inside the top 10 every single race, which has been amazing consistency. Only 1 podium in that, but great to be inside the top 10 for Hamda.
Yeah, absolutely. Hamda El Khabaisi, of course, has been part of F1 Academy for 2 years now. This is her 2nd season. She had a couple of wins, 4 wins last season and 2 pole positions. The win has escaped her this time. She has had 1 podium finish, which was in Barcelona, finishing P3. But let's hear from her now, reflecting on her time in the series.
It's a bit sad, but at the same time, looking back, the season went by so fast. And, you know, I'm sad to end it, but at the same time, I'm grateful for the opportunity that I've had with Red Bull Racing, Pepe Jean's Academy program, and just all the support I had off track. It helped quite a lot, and I feel like for my journey ongoing for next year, I'll for sure take this as a learning curve and take a lot with me. To know that this is my last 2 rounds and it's close to home and one is home, I just want to end it well, and I want to be able to finally get that win for Red Bull.
Yeah, it would be a lovely way to finish, wouldn't it, to be back on the podium. But it's been great to see her, you know, proper clean racing from her over the course of this season. Managed to work her way up the grid on several occasions. There is Dorian Pat, you can see in the black Mercedes racing suit, just perching on her car there. Most of the other drivers are in the car. She is obviously deciding to enjoy the rather cool breeze. I mean, air temperature at the moment is 23 degrees, which is a bit cooler than the conditions they experienced during testing. It was particularly cool last night. Temperatures dropped to 18 degrees, but it is still, by the looks of everyone's hair flying around, quite windy. Wind speeds at the moment 5.7.
Yeah, the wind has been gusty all week and catching some drivers out across all the series racing this weekend, especially in Sector 3, turns 12 and 13, where the wind goes on the rear of the car, creating quite lively conditions. The track temp is nearly double when these drivers were last out yesterday evening, now climbing up to 35.5 degrees. So it's going to be a very different race for these drivers. I expect the front left to grain up, just as these constant long radius corners here in Qatar, designed and built 20 years ago now, mainly for motorbike racing, but has adopted well into a car racing track. But the front left does take a big pounding. You can see the flag there in the centre of your shot. Headwind into 1, and look at the grasses as well getting pushed around. So there's a fair amount for the drivers to be thinking about as they have this delayed wait for the race to the start.
So now we can see the Tommy Hilfiger car of Nerea Marti. That was big news when it was announced that Tommy Hilfiger were going to be bringing their brand and livery to the F1 Academy. And again, same thing with the likes of Charlotte Tilbury. You know, we've got the 10 liveries from the F1 teams, but also the additional brands like Puma. And it just really shown how many eyes and the attention that F1 Academy, it's kind of rippled not just through the world of motorsport, not just through the world of sport, but also entertainment as well. Nerea Marti is very much focused on her battle in the championship at the moment for third. So she's currently in fourth at the moment, but there is a 36 points gap between Maya Vug in third, Nerea Marti in fourth, Chloe Chambers in fifth, and Hamna Alkabasi in sixth. Just 36 points, and there are 82 up for grabs over the next 3 races. So keep an eye out on Nerea Marti. She gets her elbows out, she fights, she wants to be back up there on the podium. She did have a couple of podiums, 3 podiums so far this year. But now we can see Bianca Bustamante. She's starting in 7th. Now, Bianca's had a really mixed season, hasn't she? She had a really good start to the year, pretty much in the points in all first 3 rounds, so 6 races, and then has been out of points ever since. We've seen mistakes. She kept running wide, going into the gravel trap yesterday. We did see a big incident where she spun, which sent her right to the back of the grid. What happens when suddenly you go from having a really solid season and then it just starts to decline?
Yeah, you just have to regroup, go back to the team and talk about what you need from the car. Driver coach has said Warren Hughes, got Zach Brown there as well. And all this, you just lean upon there. And let's not forget for ART, she has been the fastest driver the most times for ART, 5 times in her inter-team battle. So sometimes on the outside it may look a little negative, but there will all be positives to draw upon it. Her car control is top draw. And I think if she can just potentially calm it down, then that's where the pace would be for her. Can actually see Alicia Parmovsky there is out of the car. Maya Vug as well in the Ferrari suit there just behind. They're obviously just getting out the car, wanting to just relax and calm down before the race intensifies and the battle starts.
So there we are, she's popped out of the car. Alicia Parmovsky gave a great interview yesterday, full of enthusiasm, really eloquent, speaking about her time in F1 Academy. Then we can see Jess Hawkins there in the bobble hat. Statement piece, isn't it? Despite whatever the weather, Jess Hawkins is always in a nice woolly bobble hat. So Leah Block, let's talk about Leah, because what a season she's having. 17 years old, a very exciting young talent in motorsports. This is her debut performance in F1 Academy, the first time she's done a full season in single-seaters with ART. And she's sort of transitioned, hasn't she, from that successful career that she's had in off-road racing. She was actually the youngest champion in American Rally Association. But the car control that we've seen from her, the adaptability that she's brought to single-seater racing has been truly exceptional.
Yeah, and the pace on the back of that has been incredible. I'd actually say she's done super well, outperformed expectations in qualifying particularly. She's lost a couple of places at race starts, same as yesterday, dropped a couple of places, and yeah, that's maybe where her winter focus needs to be. Super fast, super talented over 1 lap in qualifying, which arguably is a harder trait to learn, but the racecraft, obviously something that you don't have in rallying, is something that she'll be wanting to improve. It's been a really strong year, and she is just getting further and further forward on the grid every time we go out. Being super impressive, Leah. Probably my standout driver in this second half of the season.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that one. So everyone is just really starting to stretch their legs here. I mean, in terms of the frustration, I suppose, when you all get up ready to go racing and then things are delayed, how much is that going to impact your psychology, your approach to the start of this race?
Yeah, you tend to then just go back to a reset, so you'll have a procedure, and that's where sometimes sort of superstitions come into play. If you end up doing the same thing, you get superstitious by it, maybe left glove on first before right, always getting in from the same side of the car, saying thank you to the mechanics in a particular order, and all of that. I can see a truck in the background as we look at Loven Foss, just with you can see another one there, just with some big concrete barriers. So I think that barrier damage almost too severe to actually fix. They're going to put a new wall in front of it, so the drivers and engineers there will be saying, okay, this looks like the plan, we've seen this before, it's going to be 5 or 10 minutes. And there you can see the Hiab lorry with 2 catch fences already built up, and I saw a third one already in position, so they will just place them there, and that will cover that damaged barrier very securely, so there will be no further issues there whatsoever. So the track team doing a great job here at Qatar, getting this fixed as quickly as they can.
And this is one of the things that, of course, all these drivers now have to contend with. So this might be the second season, but it's the first season F1 Academy is on an F1 weekend. So it's a super tight schedule to fit into all the sessions when you've got, obviously, Formula 1, Porsche, F2, sometimes F3 as well. So it's a very busy day, and one little incident on track can then have a knock-on effect on everything else. So you've got to be adaptable in this situation. There we can see Aurelia Nobles, who is the Puma driver, who'll be starting from 10th on the grid. Aurelia Nobles managed to finish in the points yesterday with a very respectable P9. We've seen some real flashes of brilliance from her in both qualifying and during the race. She's the highest place she's finished is 5th, which was in Zandvoort. And I think she's going to look back on this season as a really positive experience for her. You know, joining the Puma team and having, well, she's made really good friends, I believe, with some of her co-drivers. And this is just the start in her very early career.
Yeah, I mean, very impressive. Nobles, very mature for our youngest driver on the grid. Had a couple of chances yesterday to have a few lunges on Chloe Chambers as they battled, but decided better of it, and in hindsight that was the correct decision, and carried on without damage. Pulling there, looking super relaxed. Championship done, like we've already said. Starting third, she's got two very fast drivers in front, but she'll be maybe thinking, you know what, this is my time to get my elbows out. Those two drivers know that I've got nothing to lose. As we flash back to the Al-Qubaisi family, the two sisters from a very good racing father as well in Khalid, raced against him quite a lot in the Middle East. Proper sisterly love, that, isn't it, Nikki?
Quick squeeze of the face, yeah, exactly. But how lovely to be able to race alongside your sister, assuming you get on, of course. I know some siblings don't always see eye to eye, but they clearly do. They have a very strong relationship on and off the track. So Maya Vug, let's talk about Maya, because yesterday she didn't have the best start. She managed to qualify in P2 on the front row of the grid, and yet lost out to Abby Pulling, who she was not going to take P3, was she, at the start of that race? Abby Pulling had her eyes set on a P2. Unfortunately, Maya Vug went round the outside, lost a bit of grip, and Abby Pulling managed to push ahead into P2. At the end of the race, she just looked a bit disheartened, didn't she? She didn't smile like the others on the podium, even though it was a very respectable P3 finish.
I'm glad to see her smiling this morning, because I think she was distraught last night, wasn't she? I think her Prema teammate Pan lost the championship, and it was really nothing that Maya Vug did wrong. She actually got a great start, got held up by Maya Vug, and then that was the problem, and that's why she lost the place. Looking at Jessica Hawkins here, the team ambassador for Aston Martin F1 Racing. We know how quick she is in a car, and lots of different cars, not just single-seaters, GTs, and that F1 test that she had with Aston Martin as well. We know the reports from the team were super strong against their usual test driver, so hopefully more driving for her in the future, but she does a great job in this ambassador role as well for Aston Martin.
Absolutely. I mean, what a role model for females, girls of any age all around the world, to see not just these 16 drivers racing, but also the support that they're getting from the likes of Jess Hawkins and Alice Powell, who have an incredible pedigree of their own. Here we have Dorian Pat. Now, if you didn't see the podium of yesterday's race, I would urge you to watch it. It is available on YouTube if you missed it on Sky Sports. And she came out onto the podium, jumped in the air, you know, sort of gave a big sort of high five to the crowd, and she was just very, very pleased with that win. Now, given the fact that obviously that's her third win of the season, sorry, it just felt like this was the win that meant the most to her, even though she just missed out on that title.
Yep, it's been a sort of capped off a dominant weekend thus far, hasn't it? The 3 days of testing they had here a couple of weeks ago. They were so quick at all times with Dorian Pan and the Prema team. Pole position in both races, led every single lap, fastest lap. It was a proper clean sweep for her. So yeah, she should be proud of what she's done in her first single-seater season of of racing as well. There's my other teammate. Yes, one's in Ferrari, one's in Mercedes, but both run by the great Prema team constructors. Champions last year, leading the championship now, extended that lead, didn't they, yesterday in race 1, so looking good. And it isn't just Prema, is it? When you look down the grid, the teams involved, there are some top teams involved.
Yeah, there really are. I mean, the likes of Prema, Rodin, Campos, ART, MP, these are the very best, particularly when it comes to nurturing young talent, which is why they have such a critical role in getting the best out of these drivers, but they know exactly how to do it. They are the best, the pros when it comes to this area. And that's a reminder as well. The whole point of F1 Academy is so that it can become this feeder series into the next step, whether that is into eventually F3, F2, and climbing up the ladder into F1. And of course, it's going to take time. You know, the number of female drivers at the moment is still nowhere near where it needs to be. But having F1 Academy will inspire the next generation, will inspire drivers from a grassroots level. And it's amazing to see the number of registrations has increased from 3% up to 25% for females over the last year. Now that is huge. Again, it's going to take time for that talent to trickle through, but that's the whole point of F1 Academy, you know, to see these drivers, the younger generation who are going to come through will look up to these role models and aspire to race at the very top of their game. There's Chloe Chambers, who's racing for the Haas team. It was recently announced she is going to be racing for Red Bull Ford next season, so that's great to see that she has confirmed her seat. One driver who hasn't confirmed their seat yet for next year is Dorian Pan. It's obviously Abby Pulling's last season, so we won't be seeing her again, but Dorian Pan will hopefully be back next year, I would assume, again with Mercedes, as she's done such an incredible job. But it's not official yet, unless you've heard anything, Joe.
I haven't officially that I can comment on, but yeah, I'm looking happy there. And you make a great point on the seismic change of female drivers involved, but it isn't just the drivers, is it? There's the mechanics, the engineers, the data engineers, all the way through to team management now. We're seeing more and more females involved, and that's really what I love. The single most element of F1 Academy is, yes, the drivers are the spearhead, the focal point, but it filters through all the way through into motorsport. And I see it in my day-to-day. I can go to any random motorsport event, and in the last decade that's changed so quickly, and always for the better. I've said it before, but as a driver, all I want is the fastest car, and if we can get better staff from a bigger pool of people, then that's great, and that's exactly what we're seeing here at the moment across the globe in motorsport.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned now, we've got some really powerful positions, such as we've got, you know, the team's manager, Camilla Colombo, who is at Prema. And I mean, what, again, a leading figure spearheading that team. She recently was saying, though, that she very much feels the Prema team deserve to win this team's title. They've obviously been fighting really hard and have got a great selection of drivers in Tina Hausman, Dorian Pan and Maya Vug. But only time will tell how they're going to get on in the team's championship, because there is still a fair amount to play for with 3 races to go. Given this is race 2, how much are they going to be looking at the data from yesterday and how much can they use it? Yesterday's race was 11 p.m. at night. It was very cold, very different conditions. But we go again today, same track. But yeah, how useful is it?
Yeah, because it was 14 laps, there's relevance in the length of it, but the track conditions so different. As a driver, I would actually be looking back at FP1, similar time of day on Friday, so similar conditions. That's where the teams would have based their tyre pressures, the setup of the car, and the drivers should be really looking at those laps video and data-wise to see what they were doing and what they could improve on. So it is really quite a different feeling as the track temp evolves up and down the scale.
So that is Gabriella Parra there, that we can see the team manager giving Carrie Schreiner a bit of a support there at Kick Sauber. Getting ready to go racing, hopefully very soon. Now, it was announced this week that there is a new official prize for F1 Academy, and that is a race seat in GB3 next season. So that is what Abby Pulling will be doing. That's a nice shot, isn't it? Of Noé Marti just perching on a Tommy Hilfiger car. And just the amount of value that F1 Academy has now brought to the world of motorsport, and the value that that prize will have. You know, let's not forget, it's really difficult to find a race seat. It's even harder to find funding. Abby Pulling touched upon it yesterday. She's really struggled with funding over the course of her career. In her second season of British F4, she had to drop out halfway through due to funding problems. She raced in W Series. That obviously folded due to funding issues. It's not easy. So the sort of relief for her to have that opportunity in GB3 is huge.
I mean, that GB3 prize probably has a value of $1.5 million US, so it's great for Pulling to be able to continue on her platform. There's Nobles. Like you said, she's made friends over the season with lots, but her and Leah Block always seem very close, and they'll be able to share lots of information on and off track, and you try and buddy up sometimes. There's a lot of time spent on the road, travelling in hotels and airports, and it goes much, much quicker if you can have some good relationships with other drivers on the grid.
Giving it a wave to, I thought it was the fans. It is to the guys at ART, which is always good. So Bianca Bustamante giving us a lovely wave as well. Oh, and a bit of a heart. We love you too, Bianca. And good luck for this race, because it's going to be a tough one for her. But she's very much a bit of a superstar, not just in the Philippines, but worldwide. She's very big on the old socials. Which I know you're very up to date with, Joe. But Bianca Bustamante, if you haven't followed already, give her a little follow, because she does do some brilliant content and is just always giving us a bit of insight into what's going on behind the scenes in the world of F1 Academy. So it's really lovely to see what all the drivers get up to, including the fact that they had an open paddock earlier on in the week. So loads of fans came down to support, including Lewis Hamilton. He was there, obviously, as a fan, giving his support to Dorian Pa, who was also on Jimmy Kimmel earlier in the week, which again just shows the step up that this series has had in terms of the value to fans, and to be able to go on to Jimmy Kimmel. I think Dorian Pa had the time of her life. Lucky thing.
Yeah, really cool. Global reach all across, and I'd say all 16 drivers plus the wildcard, all of their social medias now are very good and interesting. So it's interesting to see how they all approach things differently. Abby Pulling very light-hearted with her stuff, and doesn't take herself too seriously, which is interesting. When you think she's the champion, you would expect that they go the most serious, but every driver has their own way of portraying their attitude and their ethos to motorsport. Al-Kubaisi sisters look like they might start wrestling more. I think we need to get this race underway before we find out which sister would win in a fight.
Looks like they're trying to trip each other up, but I'm sure it's all meant with love. Oh, maybe it's going to be a dance. Oh, okay. Oh no, karate moves. Okay, cool. Well, that's one way to... So I used to do this when I was a little girl. There used to be a rhyme that goes with it. I'm not going to sing you the rhyme, but that's one way to keep you distracted from this rather lengthy delay. So there we have Gabriele Mini again. We saw him yesterday showing his support for the drivers with Alpine. But you can see how windy it is. That's really going to affect the drivers. Now, we saw a lot of them battling it out, particularly in practice, with that gravel trap. Well, many of the gravel traps all around the circuit, actually. But actually, yesterday in the race, it only really caught out one or two, one of which being Bianca Bustamante. In terms of them learning, because previous races, obviously, we've had Singapore Grand Prix, which is very tight, you know, walls, very unforgiving. Whereas this is a great way to learn, because it's an open track. Yes, you do pay the price going into a gravel track, but at least it's not a wall.
Yeah, definitely. And we've seen lots of drivers pushing the boundaries all the way to 100, 105% there. Abby Pulling just looking very relaxed still as we wait, and the wind is blustery as well. You can see with Pulling's hair there, it isn't a constant breeze, and that makes it even harder there. Bruno Michael, the CEO of F2 and F3 on the championship, potentially speaking to future drivers of his, hopefully on the grid, in Abby Pulling.
Now that would be very exciting to see. He also does help look after F1 Academy as well, obviously alongside Susie Wolf. Now that looks like a very nice way to start your morning. Very civilised.
Very civilised, isn't it? Especially if you're used to the European winter temperatures that we're suffering at the moment. 23 degrees ambient out there in Qatar, that strong breeze. The breeze here as well really does blow. Every time I've been to Qatar, it's windy. It's the second flattest nation in the world, so there isn't really much stopping the wind sweep across this arid desert landscape. Don't get too much sand blown on. Luckily, there's some vegetation in that desert around as Alicia Palmovsky looks into the sun, just trying to work out how much longer am I going to be stood here. You kind of run out of your small talk, ask your engineer what's the time. Maybe they're even starting to think, is the race going to be maybe shortened from its either 30-minute or 14-lap configuration? Tight schedule on F1 here, so the teams will be working out what's the most likely scenario here. They won't be able to make any adjustments in terms of setup, or even they'd take some fuel out if they could, if they're not going to do such a long race. But as a driver, you're rather thinking, oh, if it's going to be 8 laps, I don't need to manage the tyre as much if it was a 14-lap run.
Now, one thing that you get in F1 Academy is super license points. The top 5 classified drivers in the standings will get super license points. Can you just explain the significance of that? Why is it so important?
So without super license points, you cannot race in F1. So it is a huge barrier to entry, not being able to collect those super license points. And there's very few championships in the world which allow you to collect them. So obviously the better you do in any of those championships, Formula 1 Academy, the same. It means that you've got the chance to get enough super license points to be able to race in F1. So it's really the first barrier that needs knocking down on your route to the top.
And in terms of the car as well, it is effectively it's an F4 single-seater car, isn't it? Officially the T421, but it's effectively the same car for all of them. Same aero, same front wing, rear wing, same thing going on underneath, but they can obviously make changes to the setup. How much of an effect will that have on the performance of the car?
Yeah, the F1 Academy Series have used a great starting point in this car. This car I've actually driven a fair bit this year, and it's a great learning car. It's very raw, no driver aids whatsoever, so no anti-lock braking. You brake too hard, you lock up. No traction control, you accelerate too hard too early, you will spin up the rear tyres. Also very limited downforce. Yes, there's front and rear wings, but they don't generate a huge amount of grip, so it's really down to the mechanical grip part of it. So the tyres really are doing the majority of the work, which makes it even harder for these drivers.
So we have had a message from race control, and it is a disappointing one. Unfortunately, for the first time this season, race 2 is going to be cancelled. This is going to be a huge disappointment for all of the drivers. Obviously, nothing can be done. We said at the start, this is the problem. It's really difficult when you're on such a busy schedule and other incidents happen on track that will impact other sessions. But unfortunately, race 2 has been cancelled. So this is going to be a real shame for the drivers, but luckily, we do get to go racing again in just a week's time. There's been a relatively large gap in between the races so far, but not this one. It will be the final race weekend in Abu Dhabi in just under a week's time. So these 16 drivers will have to roll those cars back into the pit lane.
Wow.
Obviously, yeah, wow, exactly, wow indeed.
Pan looking really frustrated. Obviously didn't expect it. It's caught her by surprise, and to anyone maybe that's tuned in a little bit late, this isn't anything that the F1 Academy Series have done. It was a previous support race, barrier damage that has lost us the race this morning.
Well, there we have it. Not how we wanted to end today, but we just have to say a massive thank you from myself, Nikki Shields, and Joe Osborne. We have loved bringing you all the action from Qatar, and thank you so much for joining us. It has been an incredible journey to date, and this weekend, F1 Academy made history, crowning its 2024 champion, Abby Pulling. Join us next weekend for the final round in Abu Dhabi.